All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Cook County Board of Appeals and Equalization to order on this Thursday, June 18th, 2026 at 6:04 p.m. We've had some signatures, but I guess we go around and say who's here. Commissioner Dave Mills, District 3.
Commissioner Deb White, District 1.
I'm Bob Thompson, County Assessor.
Rachel Ashby, Assistant County Assessor.
Okay.
Kristen Trouble-Helpersma, County Administrator.
Gary Gamble, Cook County Commissioner, District 2.
Ann Sullivan, Cook County Commissioner for District 4.
Brady Powers, Cook County Auditor.
All right. Thank you, Janet. Do you, as long as we're such a small group.
Jana Kokamiller, doing the AV, the live stream.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And since we're such a
Ron Lund.
thank you, Ron. All right. First thing is to have a little presentation here and pass it over to Assessor Thompson and Brady as well.
Thank you, and Commissioners. So I do have just a quick PowerPoint presentation with a little bit of updates on some of the assessment statistics. Most of these slides you guys have kind of seen similar ones before, but they've been updated for the 26 assessment, taxes payable 27. This we like to show just to, sometimes we get people in who, you know, they're looking at the wrong year and they're trying to appeal their taxes, or, you know, they're a year late for the valuation. So we have this slide available to show the timeline of our assessment, what period we're studying those sales, what the assessment date is, which is January 2nd of each year. In this case, it's 2026. And then we have these appeals meetings that, you know, for the townships occur in April and May, and then the County Board of Appeal and Equalization in June. The levy gets set later in November, December, and then the tax statement will come out in the spring of 27. So this slide shows just a number of sales that are in our study period, and just to clarify, our study period is October 1st of 24 to September 30th of 25. So, you know, sometimes a realtor will say, oh, those numbers are different than what I'm looking at, and they might be looking at January 1 to January 1. So we had 305 sales in this study. It's a little more than last year, obviously less than in 23 and 22 studies. 21 study was the most we had, at almost double of what we had this year. So the market seems to be cooling. I think part of that is because of the lack of inventory. At the bottom of the screen there, you'll see that we have currently 110 active listings. That excludes, as of this morning, that excludes anything that's under contract or pending or contingent. Last year in April, there was only 34 active listings, so the listings have started to climb up. But in the springtime, we typically see a boost of listings. People want to market it at the right time. So this is just broken out into a bar graph, so you can kind of see this goes back a little further to 2016. We've kind of come back to the normal level of sales in Cook County. And then this is
Can you go back just for one
Oh,
sec?
yeah.
Sorry. Trying to absorb. Okay, thank you.
So yeah, we had that obvious big increase. 2020 was kind of a weird year. It started out where nobody was really certain what was going to happen. I think a lot of people were nervous with the pandemic that the economy could just completely tank and crash, but it was clear by 2021 that we were looking at a different market, and a lot of people kind of trying to relocate out of the cities, and I think that's where we saw this big push of sales. And when people saw what was happening, they all jumped on the bandwagon and started listing their properties. So this is our total county market value, looking at going back to, I think it's 2015 there? I can hardly see it.
2005. Yep.
2005, sorry. So yeah, it shows that first, you know, the increase that we saw in the late 2000s, and then we saw kind of that dip after 2009-10. Things were relatively stable, a little bit decline, but I would call it stable all the way up until about 2014-15. And then things slowly started to tick up, and then we really saw it take off closer to 2019, 2020. And then obviously in 2021, 22, we saw the massive increases. So we are currently double where we were, I think it's back in we're more than double where we were in like 2016 on the total estimated market value for the county.
How does that compare to the state or the nation?
I do have a couple of slides later on, but it doesn't show total estimated market value. It breaks it down by residential, seasonal, recreational, and commercial. So those are the three categories that I look back at Lake and St. Louis counties for comparison.
Bob?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Would you say out loud to for the listening public, because this blue, white on blue is really hard to see, what our total real estate market value is at this point, and where we were at, let's just say back at 2005? I mean, how much? Just say 3 billion?
Yep, so we are at almost $3.15 billion today. That's our total estimated taxable market value. That doesn't exclude the 92% of exempt land that we have. This is just the taxable value. Back in 2005, we were at just about 1.15 billion, so almost triple that. And then looking at in more recent history, 2017, we were at 1.6 billion. So we're almost double that 2017 number.
Thanks.
Yeah. So this kind of reiterates the number of sales, but I also broke out, because you guys are all familiar that we also reject sales from our study. If a relative sells to a relative, we throw that out of the study. Parcels that have been split or combined and they sell, we have to throw those out of the study because you can't compare the before and after assessed values to the sale price. Otherwise, it looks wrong when you do a subdivision. So we've rejected 90 sales in this study. It's about 29% of the sales. We used 215 sales in the study, just over 70%. And again, the total EMV is 1.48 billion, or 3.148 billion, and the new construction amount of that is $35 million. So that's 1.1% of our total county EMV was new construction. And then I did this because it's an interesting trend that I've been seeing is the number of rejected sales in Cook County. They've been relatively stable. They've actually declined over the years. And this next slide is just kind of looking at it from a different lens with using the 100% threshold across the board. So you can see, back in 2016-17, we were rejecting more sales. I don't know why that was the case, but the number of rejected sales have kind of been declining. I think that just speaks to, in the market today, a lot of people are saying, well, I'm going to list it and get as much as I can, and that's what we would call an open market transaction. There's more people pursuing the fullest potential of their real estate when they sell it, rather than saying, I'm going to sell it to so-and-so because I want to keep it local, whatever the case may be, but we do see a lot of those reject sales in this county. And then the next slide, I compare it to Lake.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Gamble.
Yeah, Bob, whether you can address this or not, I'm just wondering if the figures that you just talked about, that within the industry, do we see within different areas, especially tourism popular areas, where that figure varies with other counties within the state? And that could even be across the country. But if there is a popular area that's attracting people, you tend to get more for your real estate than you would if it was not. So I'm just wondering how much that might contribute to that.
I think it probably definitely has a factor. Why people are choosing to go with a sale outside of like an open market transaction, we don't always know, but like estate sales, they're typically going to be rejected depending on the case. If they market an estate sale for average typical marketing time, it can be kept in the study. But there's a lot of cases where we have to reject those sales just because of the way it's written into the law, like a sibling sale if I'm selling to a brother or sister, or mother, father to son and daughter. But I did look at Lake and St. Louis County because we are in the fiscal disparities pool with them.
Yes.
So one of the things I was looking into was, what are the reject rates in those two counties? Because
Wow.
if you're rejecting sales for the wrong reasons, it can cause an inaccurate assessment, right? If you're rejecting a sale because your assessment is only 1/3 of the sale price and trying to find a reason to throw it out of the study so you don't have to increase values that much, that could be a concern. So I looked at Lake and St. Louis County in comparison to ours, and you can see going back to 2017-18, we were actually kind of in a similar pattern. That was obviously another assessor in Cook County at the time. And then, I took over as assessor in 2019. You can see that the number of rejected sales started to drop off, and in comparison to Lake and St. Louis County, quite a bit less. And as we've progressed up to the 2025 study, St. Louis County just is doing something abnormal that none of the other counties are really doing. They're seeing a significant increase in the rejected sales. And I did reach out to the Department of Revenue to kind of bring this to their attention and ask them if they're watching this or if they're paying attention to it. They're the ones who have a lot of the data, and they can analyze it much easier than I can. They have GIS guys who can put it into a map, which you'll see later, of what's going on with the sales and the trends and all of those things. And I did ask about St. Louis County, and from what I understand, in the last couple of years, there has been a lot of partial interest sales from one of the mining companies, and those partial interest sales are always rejected as well. That's something where, if I'm selling 50% of equity in a parcel, that doesn't go into the study because it's not reflection of the total real estate value. So, I don't know, I didn't do any more checking into it. I just wanted to look at the numbers, and I did suggest to the Department of Revenue that they include this in their VOS report, which is kind of like an overview of the statewide assessment figures and the trends that's happening. So we'll see if they agree that this is information that's worthwhile looking into. But I mean, as far as assessors go, the Department of Revenue really watches like if we're chasing a sale, which is the term they use if a property sells and we just set the value at the exact sale price and we don't adjust the neighborhood up to reflect that, because what you end up doing is you get an uneven assessment, and then the people who didn't sell or buy are unequally assessed with the houses that have sold. So in addition to looking at sales chasing, I suggested that rejecting sales is also a way that maybe could manipulate someone's assessment, and that it should be something that they're looking at. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Any discussion in the association about that, or?
Just a little bit. I mean, I've brought it up actually with St. Louis County, and I said, why are all these sales getting rejected? In fact, there was one we discussed at length. There's a pizza shop that sold in Virginia for $600,000, and
Do you know which one?
I don't.
Because there's one right on the corner, and I was impressed.
They make good pizza?
Well, it's just a production, just like
Yeah.
frozen and whatever.
Well, anyway, so they had marked that $400,000 of that $600,000 sale was for the business value and the equipment, personal property. And then, we had a sale down at the south of the border cafe. And when I called and asked them, I said, well, what do you think the personal property, the equipment and stuff is worth? And they said, oh, that stuff's not worth anything to us. I mean, we didn't pay any extra for that. We're probably going to replace it all. And the building needs a ton of work. So they said $600,000 is what we paid for the real estate. And so I can't reject that sale and say there was $200,000, $400,000 of personal property included. But to me, it's very similar to a pizza shop. I don't know what their recipe is. But, if it's not a chain that has more than one location, I don't think that the brand is really what's driving the value there. I think it probably was the real estate, but I don't work in St. Louis County. It was just something that I observed and I brought up with them, and I brought it up with Revenue.
Interesting. Thank you.
So another interesting statistic is the high-end properties. I also have this in a line graph, but with this, I can show you that we've already had 9 sales over $1 million since October 1st, and we have one pending, the $3.7 million listing that caused a lot of stir in the neighborhood. That one has now gone pending, so I expect that one will close. But it's interesting to see that, we've gone from $3 million transactions in 2019, $1 million transaction in 2020. That's explainable, but then it really starts to tick up. And then 15 just in this study. So here's what that looks like in our bar graph. We're seeing a significant increase, and in fact, when the real estate agents come in for their meeting in April, I lay out the number of properties that are assessed over $1 million, And that has grown from, I think it was like 60 back in 2017 or 18, to now we have over 430 properties assessed over $1 million in the county.
Out
So
of how many?
significant growth. Well, we have 8,500 taxable parcels. So there's over 430 of those over $1 million in the assessed value. And the number of transactions, is just a fraction of those.
Commissioner Gamble.
Yeah, thank you. So how much of that is a reflection of the increasing cost to build as opposed to the increased demand that raises cost?
I think that has a big factor. From what I understand, if somebody is going to a general contractor who is going to, start to finish, take a vacant lot and build them the product, the lowest I'm hearing is $400 a square foot, and that's for very basic construction. It's not any upgrades, it's gonna be laminate flooring, asphalt roof. It's gonna be like a hardy siding, something that is not an upgrade. It's not gonna be a cedar sided, it's not gonna be a brick house, but very basic construction is starting at about $400 a square foot with a general contractor. You can find contractors out there who will just do like the framing and like an enclosing. So a lot of people, they have the skills to finish an interior, and they look for a contractor who will just kind of seal a house up. And some of those contractors are probably closer to $200 to $250 a square foot to do the framing and sealing. So, but if that's the case, you're going out and hiring your own concrete worker, and that's where a lot of people are shocked with the sticker shock of concrete these days. A simple foundation can cost $100,000, $200,000, depending on the size. So I do think the construction cost is playing into it, because a lot of people probably talk to these contractors and then they realize what it's going to cost and how long it's going to take to complete the project. And that's where they say, maybe we'll look for something that's already built.
Mr. Chair, as a follow-up to that, if you look at your cost per square foot, how that compares, if you were to look at the 87 counties and say, because when we look at, let's just say, cost for gasoline fuel, cost for groceries, cost for this, when you do a comparable, these are things that tell you something about your particular area as to how cost is affected. So if you live very remote, and it costs so much, we hear that often when we're talking about construction work and things, it costs because the cost of gasoline's going up, you gotta bring all their equipment up here, so there's an additional cost. When you look at those costs as a reality and you understand why that is, it just helps inform, the community as well as decision makers, so you understand, why is this? And so that would be interesting to know how that square foot price ranges. Same way with the median price of a home in Cook County compared to, we're comparable to Dakota County and Washington County, some of these counties were pricey homes.
And I think you're talking about the selling price per square foot of like the average home or whatever, but construction costs, I'm not familiar with what it is down in the cities. I did have a contractor call me about their assessment, they own a property up here. And, after I had talked with them, I said, you can ask around, you can call a few contractors, and they're going to probably tell you over $400 a square foot. They could not believe that number. So that was coming from a contractor.
Yeah, I mean, both are independent of the construction relative to the median price, but they are still something that you're weighing to see effect, within your area.
Yeah, because
Thank you.
There's certainly people who will initially pursue new construction and then decide they're going to go a different route when they find out the cost.
Yeah, we had that deed presentation about the costs of purchasing and remodeling versus the cost of new construction, and it's like a lose-lose, basically, but, Commissioner Sullivan.
I just,
excuse me.
well, I was just going to say, I just looked up, and the average cost to build a home in the Twin Cities is $400 per square foot.
Is it?
It is.
So
Yeah,
we're
very
right there with
interesting.
them.
But why this is important is that when you're looking for innovative ways to try to mitigate cost and still provide housing, there might be some ways to try to avoid things that are negative impacts by how you approach that. Modular homes would be an example that you could reduce affordability by buying volume through a provider that isn't influenced by those factors that influence construction up here.
Yeah, and I know in other parts of the country, I don't think we've seen it up here yet, but the 3D printed homes, it's becoming a thing, and that actually reduces construction
Very
costs
nice homes,
significantly.
too.
Yeah. So that could be another future solution.
Yeah.
So $1 million sales, we'll move on to, this is from our sales study, you know, September to October. The median price of a home is currently $420,000. In our 25 study, that's only 1% increase over the median home in our study last year. The average price of a home is $468,000. That's up 6.67. You know, these numbers, it's hard to understand why one is so much different than the other, but
Well,
median and
$1 million
average are
homes.
two different
That'll
things.
do it, you know,
Yeah.
for the average, for sure.
So those are pretty big numbers. I mean, that's on par with the metro, the Twin Cities seven county metro area is the mid 400s, 500,000s. This is from the Department of Revenue, and I can send you the link. I searched their website up and down and couldn't find it, and I actually had to, I reached out to one of the Department of Revenue data analysis guys, and they pointed me to the direction of the link, but you can select different property type categories. You can't do the entire, all county value. It's broken out into the property types, so commercial, residential. This one here is the residential, and I added in the change since 2019 because that kind of levels the playing field, because, you know, one year a county might go 10%, and the county next door went 5%, and then the next year they're flipped around, and so it's looking back on a longer period, it kind of shows the bigger picture. So going back post or pre-pandemic, you know, Cook County in residential value has gone up 97%. Another reason I went back to 2019 is because if I go to 2020, we have the shift of short-term rentals that went in and out of residential and commercial. So those numbers get skewed, but if you go to 2019, it's before all of that.
Kuchaching surprised me quite a bit.
Yeah, they had a 10% increase this year in residential, but I think that they've been lighter on their increases going back. I wish, if I had the data, you know, I have a spreadsheet for Lake and St. Louis County going back to 2019. I would have to recreate that for other counties if I wanted to, but, you know, this is where I say the state has the ability to do this stuff much quicker and easier, but I did add in the current increases because when you're in this application in the state's website, you can just click on the county and see the last year's percentage of increase. It doesn't go any further back. But, you know, looking at Lake County actually had a higher increase on residential over the 6-7 year period, but lower last year than we had. So those are just some of the things that happen over the course of the years. So this is looking at seasonal recreational, similar numbers to residential. Can't tell you why they play out this way, but, you know, a lot of times the seasonal rec are going to be lakeshore properties. Up here we have a lot of residential homesteads and stuff that are lakeshore, but that's kind of where you get some of this variation between the different counties. Again, Lake County had the highest increase since 2019. And then this is going into commercial because commercial is obviously a topic of the evening. And looking back to 2019, Cook County has seen a 76% increase in commercial values, Lake County 97%, and St. Louis County 50%. This year, we were at 6.7% increase on countywide commercial total EMV. So I can give you the link to that. You know, like I said, you can look at any county in the state, and in fact, when you look at rural vacant land in Cook County, I think it showed like a 2% decrease this year, and there were a lot of other counties that saw a decrease in rural vacant land values as well. I'm not sure, I'd have to talk to the Revenue Department to find out if they're accounting for classification shifts in those numbers, because they do have the ability to pull out classification shifts, because if you have a whole bunch of rural vacant land that was now developed, it would come out of that classification and it would reduce the county's total value of that. And it could skew those numbers. I mean, you might still have the value of that land is the same or higher, but it's been changed to a different classification and it might show a decline. So now back to the, this is looking at the total estimated market value of the county again. And the reason I bring this up is because I oftentimes hear from taxpayers, they say, well, you know, what happens if my value goes down? Are my taxes going to go down? And I always want to bring this up, and I say, if the values go down, the assessed values will follow it. That's what happened over the course of 2011, 12, 13. we saw decreasing values in the county. It doesn't always mean the taxes are gonna go down, and that's where we come into this four-house town. And I think this is important, Ron, to look at if you're not familiar with this, if you've never seen these slides before. So I'm just going to demonstrate a couple of slides about a hypothetical town that has only 4 houses. And in the hypothetical town, there's a $4,000 budget. You know, that covers your police, your plowing, and everything else. So if every house is assessed at $100,000, the taxes for each house would be $1,000, assuming they're all classified as residentials, homesteads or something, because different property types pay a different rate. So if you cut that levy in half, obviously the taxes go down. The value may stay the exact same, but with the levy declining or the levy decreasing, the taxes would decrease as well. So the next scenario, let's say you double the values of these homes. If the township only needed $4,000 to operate, doubling those values doesn't change what they pay in taxes whatsoever. They're covering the levy equally because they're all assessed equally. Now, if you cut the values in half, the taxes still don't go down. So a lot of people have the misconception that their property value is directly linked to their taxes, which it does play a role in, and I'll show that later, but the levy is the bigger impact. If all property values are changing equally, the levy is what's really going to be the bigger impact there. And that's what's shown in this slide. So obviously, in most cases, you see lakeshore homes that are worth more than non-lakeshore. So in this example, I put the lakeshore home at $200,000 and the non-lakeshore homes are at $100,000. So you can see the lakeshore home pays a higher tax bill because it has a higher value, but the county or the township is still collecting that $4,000 budget. So when those markets change at different paces, you know, the demand for lakeshore is higher than the non-lakeshore. So the lakeshore property in this hypothetical situations goes up 20%, and the non-lakeshores go up 7%. That shifts the $4,000 tax burden to the property that saw a bigger increase. And actually, the taxes in this scenario go down on a property that had a value increase. So that, you know, a lot of times when people see this slide, then they start to understand how that levy is allocated based on the values and the classifications. And if certain property types are changing at different rates, that can fluctuate where the money's coming from.
Yeah.
Please.
Mr. Chair. So Bob, is it not true? I mean, trying to understand this, it can get complicated because of all the variables, but if you look at tax rate, you can talk about tax rate, but the value of the home, those two are you can't separate the two because one affects the other.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is that you could have in St. Louis County a tax rate that's 67%, but the median price of the home is $160,000,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to end up paying less than you do when you have a high value with a low tax rate. So when we say, well, we have a low tax rate here, you can't separate tax rate from the value of the home.
Right, and I understand what you're saying there. I guess I will make a counterpoint that, you know, if you were to buy a $500,000 home in Duluth and a $500,000 home in Cook County, pretty sure the tax rate is lower in Cook County. Even
I would agree with that, but I'm saying that if you look at median price,
Mm-hmm.
so when we compare to other counties, you can't separate tax rate from value. And I would agree, if you got a higher tax rate and the same value,
Mm-hmm.
the higher tax rates, you end up more tax. But my point is that we claim we have a low tax rate, but you can't separate value in that calculation.
Yeah.
It's like if you go in and you get a hotel at the same rate in some other county that doesn't have the additional tax, you're going to pay low in tax because the tax rate is lower. So I'm just saying, when we talk about that, honestly, you cannot separate the two. But I agree, a higher tax rate, I mean, it's just common sense. Higher tax rate, same value, you're going to pay more because your tax rate's higher.
It's more than common sense, it's math.
Pardon?
It's more than common sense, it's math.
Well, yeah, and we could talk about math nowadays, but Bob doesn't have the time. But I do appreciate the fact that you represent it visually, so.
Yeah, and Just one last comment on that. So I've had people before say, I'm going to move to a different county, it's going to save me money. And, what I usually ask them, if they say, a lot of times they'll say, if I moved to Silver Bay, I would save on taxes. And I ask them, I say, well, what's better about Silver Bay other than saving the money? If you buy a $500,000 house here and $500,000 house in Silver Bay, clearly the house in Silver Bay is going to be bigger, probably newer, nicer, because at $500,000 there, you get more for your money. But you're not considering where you want to be. That is value, the location, right?
I don't disagree with that. It's when you, because as a director who hires people, if wage is the only thing that I evaluate when it comes to my decision, but it's not. And if you look at across the country, what people look for, wage is one component, benefits is another component, the environment, the school, the medical provisions, the amenities that exist. But you need to know yourself what you value and put a weight on those things in making a decision. But I agree, because oftentimes you say, well, okay, go buy a, and I won't say it publicly, because if I name a state, then I'll get in trouble. I won't let the highway department stopping me, so, anyway.
Right, so yeah, oftentimes you see people,
I will say that.
oftentimes you see people making that sacrifice and saying, you know what, I'm going to buy something smaller in Cook County because that's where I want to be. They value the location more than the structure.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I think that's all I have on the four-house town. This just kind of summarizes what we talked about, where, the taxes can go down even though the value went up. If, in this scenario, when you have a property type shifting more than the other property types and no change in the levy, you could have that scenario play out. And that's how it works with all of the classifications and values. Much more complex than a four-house town, though. So the four-house town takeaways, the legislator sets the classifications. They say who's eligible for exemptions, exclusions, and special programs. They determine the process and the rules for the valuation. In other states, some other states, they say value it at 1/3 of the value. The value and classifications determine the.
Wait, can you say more about that?
So in Iowa, I believe they actually, they tax you based on
Set it
a
out.
portion of the market value. And I think there's some other states that do that. They establish something less than market value to determine the tax bills.
Like,
And I don't know what the reasoning or
I was gonna say, to
justification
what
is.
end? Because if it's all,
I'll be golfing with the Iowa assessors in August, and I'll ask them.
okay,
But I think if you have to establish 1/3 of market value, you still have to establish market value.
right, and then it's all shared, and just like, what's the difference? Huh.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah.
Cropland, farmland.
So the value and classifications, they determine that slice of the pie. How big is that pie? Think of you're at a buffet and you take your slice of the pie to the scale, they're going to weigh it and tell you how much you have to pay. If there's one pie and it's divvied up amongst everybody in the restaurant, the whole pie is $20. That's how a levy works.
Yeah.
And if you got a bigger piece, you pay more. The tax rates are calculated to ensure that the amount of money that we need is collected. So in Minnesota, a county should never collect more than what they levied. And in other states, it's different. They use mill rates, and if you have a value increase after the mill rate's been established, they can end up with more money than they needed. And that's how I understand Colorado works. They use a mill rate still. So, and that's the reason for setting and establishing the value ahead of the levy and the budget, because we can determine how big your piece of the pie is and make sure everyone is okay with that. Sometimes they're not okay with it, but after the Board of Appeal and Equalization, the only resolve is tax court. So we establish the size of the slice of the pie, then the county board determines the price of that pie. And at the end of the day, we send out the tax bills.
Please,
Price of
Commissioner
pie. So a while back, we had some property that, an individual came in and questioned why they were being taxed at that value. And the state came back and said, well, we don't think that the matrix you used in applying and determining that value is what we see it, so we're encouraging it. Well, we're telling you, you're going to have to bump it up 10%. So when we use what they give us as the structure for determining value, and then the state comes back and makes a decision, how often do you think that their rationale is consistent with the rationale that you use? And my point is that let's just say that a state is looking for revenue, and so they're saying, let's just try to bump these things up a little bit. And my point is that when people are asking, well, how come? We have accountability with somebody that provides oversight, even when we, talk about these things that are before us. We can make a decision as a governing board, but it'll go down to the state and it'll say, yeah, that we agree or we don't agree, because we have that authority over us. So, as an assessor, if you think that it's fair and reasonable when they come back with those recommendations, or if you scratch your head and wonder, how did they come up with that based upon what we're doing in our evaluation?
Yeah, so what you're talking about is a state board order. We actually just got our state board order last week, which means they came back and said we don't have any board orders. Every year they issue you a letter, and I have all 6 or 7 years now from my time as assessor hanging on the wall. That's on my corkboard. It's the only thing hanging on my corkboard, is that we didn't have board orders those years. And to your comment about the state might be looking for revenue, if they order a state board order increase, it doesn't generate any more revenue for the county or the state. It's just equalizing the assessments. So they might look at a district and say, well, your median sale is at 88%. We want you to be between 90 and 105. At that point, when that's happened, you're beyond the point where you can make those changes, because letters have been out to the taxpayers, they've gotten their value notices. You can't just go change it to make it 90%. So that's when they order a state board order. They do give you an opportunity as the assessor to explain why you didn't get into the 90% window. And I actually asked, because we had a meeting with the Department of Revenue last month, and I was looking at other counties where they were outside of 90 to 105 that's available on their PRISM website. And I said, what does it take to get a state board order? It obviously isn't just being outside of 90 to 105. And he said, if the assessor can give us a good reason why they didn't go to the number, and sometimes, you might be at, like say you're at 106% on the median sale. If the market's increasing and you say to revenue, we're just going to let the market catch up to where we're at on those sales, they might accept that and not order a board order where they decline the value, reduce the value by 5%. But I've only ever seen them go by 5 or 10% increments. It's a 5% increment typically. They don't just say 1 or 2%. And they don't specifically say, on 2-story homes in this district, we want you to apply 10%. And that's something I have the ability to do. I can say 2-story homes that are red are going up, I can be that specific, whereas when they come in, they say everything that's classified as residential and seasonal rec in this district must go up 5 or 10%, and you don't get to fight that.
Yeah. So would it be correct, just for public information, that you referenced 6-7 years that you have those documents that are on your wall? Is it correct for us to understand that that means the state is affirming that your evaluations are done correctly? So we haven't always been in that position, and we've been threatened by the state. If we don't get our act together, they'll come up and do it for us. So
They did it once,
the
didn't
point
they?
is that it affirms, from my perspective, it affirms your competency and stewardship of the responsibility you're entrusted with. It's like an audit. If you have an audit that says you're following best practices, you're doing this and everything else, you walk away and pat yourself on the back. If you don't, then you got to change things, because we have an expectation you're going to meet this requirement. So kudos to you and your staff.
Thank you. Yeah, and the state board orders are tough. I know we did have one, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 years ago. It wasn't that long before I started here, and that was just, hey, add 10 or 5% to this district. But there is another thing that they can order, a state-ordered reassessment, and that's when the state brings their own appraisers up here, and they do every single property in the county in 1 year. The entire county gets reviewed in 1 year by an appraiser, and they charge you per parcel.
Yeah.
And that is the worst thing that can happen for a county assessor's office.
I think we were close.
Yeah.
Oh, it
I think
didn't
it
happen.
actually happened, I do think it happened in the 70s or 80s. That's when, so we have these photos from down in the vault. I'm almost certain all of these photos were taken by the Department of Revenue, and that's when they assigned parcel numbers to them. They put a little box in the picture that it was like they wrote on a chalkboard and then took a picture of the house with the chalkboard and assigned a parcel number to
I
them.
was gonna say, I know Department of Revenue photos, and that's definitely one.
Yeah.
Started that out as a kid.
So just 2 more slides, I think, here. So for appeals, you can't appeal a percentage of increase. You have to focus on the end result. If the new value is not accurate, then you have grounds for an appeal. The process takes on, for my office, more of a fee appraisal approach where we review the property information for accuracy, we review similar sales, recently sold properties, and then we offer the taxpayers the opportunity to provide input. And this is the appeals from front to back. You can informally talk to the assessor's office. If that doesn't work, you can either go to the local boards if you're in a township with a meeting, or go to the open book meeting if you're outside of a organized township. And then from there, if you still don't get a resolve, you can go to the county board, which is where we're at today. And if the county board doesn't feel like there's enough information to make a decision, and the taxpayer is still unhappy or not satisfied with the outcome, they can go to tax court. But the taxpayer can also skip everything and just go to tax court. They can file, so for the 26 assessment, they have all the way up until the end of April in 2027 to file a tax court petition. So, they would have time to get an appraisal done and see, what the appraisal says compared to the assessment. The fee for filing in tax court, they've intentionally kept it really low, so it promotes people to pursue these when they think that it's necessary. So the tax court is the end-all and the final decision maker in property valuations when there's disagreement between the county and the taxpayer. And that's all I have for the PowerPoint.
Okay,
It took a lot longer than I thought it was going to.
well, thank you. Yeah, so going on in the agenda, we have 2 cases. We have both Ron Lund, who is here this evening, and also Matt and Kim Kramer. If it's all right with you, Mr. Lund, I would like to take a small break before we get to your case. And
Tell you what,
yes,
it's going to be really quick.
let's do it.
Yeah. The reason I'm here, and I appreciate the everything, the complexity of it and all that, and I'm sure Bob is doing his job. We've had a little round and round, but that's nothing personal. There's only 2 things. You have read, I assume, my letters and stuff. The one that, last year on the fireplaces, it seemed such a small thing, and I was just amazed that after I had these things for 30 years that they would pop up and be an issue.
Yeah.
I bought 2 of them from Alan Hedstrom because he had ordered them for somebody, and then they had decided not to have them, and so that's how I found them. And the other 2 I got after that. I don't remember where. But anyway, so I could have put them in where the small little antiquated heaters were and put them on the little piece of metal that has some asbestos in it and let them sit like that.
No.
But for 2 pieces of plywood and some fake brick, it made them look nice.
Yeah.
They always were the heater for the cabin. I didn't buy them for anything else. I bought them to replace the heaters that were in the cabins. So we had an issue on that. He calls them a fireplace. I have the book. They're not, you've seen this, I have that in the packet. They're a stove propane room heater, so that's that issue. And so whatever you decide on that, that's my case on that.
Okay, thank you.
The other one is, I just got a little concerned, of course, when I saw the amount of, the valuation went up by about $416,000. And then these little cabins were built in the late 30s, early 40s. Not really much has changed in them, except 2 of them maybe had a little more done, and one in the 70s and one in the early 80s. But when I got these, looking at these here, that from 26 to 27 now, it's going to be on number one cabin, 134% increase in valuation. Number two is 143% of increase. Number three is 155% increase. Number six, et cetera. They go through about 155, 156, 100, and last one, number 8, is 162. Now, you probably know who my consultant is. I don't know if you know his name or not. I didn't mention it, but he's from Duluth, and he's also retired. He's an appraiser, did for the state and the county here and all over the place. And he sits on the board of the Equalization Board for St. Louis County. In fact, he's on there tonight. But when I ran this by him just to get his opinion, because I realize I don't know the complexities of what you guys are talking
Sure.
about. This is just to get information.
Yep.
And his take on it was, he agreed with me on the heaters. He said if they're only for the heat of the cabin, if it's all you got, and that's what I put them in there for, then you probably shouldn't have to pay on those. The other thing he said was, these increases didn't mean that much to him, except he took issue with the comparison of the 80s. He thought these cabins that I have should more be compared to the 60s, which makes sense. They have the same old wiring, for the most part, they ever had from 1940. Same little fuse boxes, little 15. A couple of them have, I've put electric water heaters in 2 of them that are upgraded a little bit, but for the most part, they still have a mix of the old wiring. The interiors are, maybe there's some paneling from the 60s or 50s that were put in. Number 7 has the same old 1940s plywood in it.
Oh,
All of them have issues of underneath the cabins are just on blocks. 2 of them, number 8 especially, floats around. So every so often I have to, I showed you
Level
a
it,
picture
yeah.
of that. And then number 4, that has some issues, just deterioration. And number 3, I didn't include that one, but that, in the bedroom, you walk in there and you can tell the floor is plopping up and stuff. So looking at this amount of increase in those just kind of surprised me. Now, that's all I really have, and I can't really, because I'm not doing the job you do, I can't tell you what's correct or not, but I listened to my guy. That was his suggestion, and so that's about all I have.
yeah.
And I'll let it go, and you can make your decision, and I'll still be a taxpayer.
Thank you, and thank you for making your case there. Any response, Bob, that you want to give, or do you have questions?
Well, I just want
Commissioner
to say
White?
about
Yeah.
the little fireplaces, but like
Yeah.
we have a Lopi, and
Yeah.
you see the flame, but it is a heat source. I mean,
Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah.
a,
I
it's
don't
a,
sit
it's
around
to
and
heat
roast
the cabin.
marshmallows
It
every
happened
night,
to,
maybe.
it happened to be there. Alan Hedstrom had them. That was it. I said, oh, that's cute. I didn't specifically put them in there to draw anybody.
Sure.
It's just an addition to the cabin, and I
It's
built the
practical.
little fake brick things they sit on, rather than having them, you know,
So
it was,
that's the only thing I can.
it's an amenity.
It's the
but
only
it's
thing I
not-
can speak to with confidence, because I have one and it's not a fireplace.
Yeah, no, it's
It's my heat
not.
source, which you can back up to like a real wood stove and feel warmer. But I don't think
Yeah.
of it as a
And I don't,
fireplace per se.
I mean, people have commented, oh, they're cute, but they're not something they sit around and, you know, spend family time or throw logs on them or something, you know. Anyway, that's my take. So.
Mr. Chair, before
Commissioner Gamble, please.
Bob responds, thank you. So my question would be, the criteria that is used to differentiate between what is the fireplace and what what is a heating device? That would be one question. The other is that we've seen in the past that we were so tardy on our, going around and meeting our quartile requirements that sometimes, because it's been so long since there's been an evaluation, that is a significant jump. So I don't know how, those two things are things I guess I would like addressed. What determines the fireplace, and when was the last time the appraisal was done?
Yes, so Commissioners, I do have these are on the records as wood stoves. It's in the line item under the fireplace section. So we have several options. If I'm in a property record and I'm adding a fireplace to the record, I would click into that fireplace line and prompt it, and it would say, wood stove $500, wood stove $1,000, wood stove $1,500, and it goes all the way up to a $30,000, brick or rock fireplace, floor to ceiling fireplace. So we have several different levels of what we add value for that amenity. Every property in the county that we're aware of that having a wood stove, whether it be propane or actual wood burning, we do add it to the record because we see it as an amenity. I can't speak to what you have in your place. I don't know what it looks like, but there's a viewing window. It provides heat and a visual ambiance. And in fact, in some of the advertisements, I don't know if you guys saw those, it was advertising that 4 of the cabins have fireplaces. And then in one of the Google reviews, which unfortunately it wouldn't upload to the packet today, but one of the Google reviews I found said the fireplace in our cabin didn't work. Ron jumped over and helped us light it right away. So, I mean, I think that in general, people view these as an amenity. And in fact, I was just looking at booking a place down at Craigan's, and if you want to, I mean, obviously they're different, they're not wood stoves, but when you get that fireplace, it is an extra charge for the room. So we've been adding wood stoves since I started here, and something like this is just a little $500 addition. I do know, and Ron pointed this out, that some of our the cabin records, they'll still say under our heating source, it says space heater, and then we also have the wood stove, but the space heater doesn't add value. That was just, back in the older records, and in fact, I have the stuff going back to the 70s here, saying that they were space heaters, and then I think these 4 or 5 cabins, they were added in the 90s. 4 cabins.
You had 5 on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you took that one off yet or not, but I don't have 4. I mean, I don't have 5, I have 4 cabins, which is not 5. You did have 5 on there.
Yeah.
I think it was number 5 cabin you had on there.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I've never charged more for that unit that has that. That was a heater. It wasn't even thought of.
So, it sounds like in the 90s, about what, 95, they were added?
95, 96.
Or replaced the
Yeah,
wood.
30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, whenever I don't know who put the wood stoves on it. It may have been before me, it may have been when I was in the office, but as far as I know, the first time I did a full inspection on your property was just this last summer. I did come out and visit with Ron in 2024 after the 2024 assessment went out. And at that time, I showed up on the property and I said, Ron, there's a lot of things wrong with this record. The building is not graded correctly. It's over depreciated. And if I start going through and correcting the wood stoves, I have to correct everything. I said, if you want to pursue an appeal, we got to look through every cabin and we got to update everything.
How come I don't remember that?
I don't know, Ron, but that was the conversation we had, and that was why I left your property that day.
In 2024?
Yep, it was 2024, and that's the field card you have with the notes is from 2024, the spring of '24. And I told you that at that time,
When I showed you number 2, open the door, was that 24 or 25?
we went into
I thought
number.
that was last year.
It was in '24. I have pictures of it, June '24.
That's when I opened the door? Okay.
Yep.
Well, whatever. It seems like
I have
it
a
was
picture
just-
of the wood stove.
It's okay. I'm not.
Yeah.
It seems like last year to me. So,
Yeah, so
whatever.
at that time.
I can relate.
Yeah, at that time I did, we had the conversation. I said, Ron, our quintile for Grand Marais was supposed to be 2023. And we pushed it back because we were doing the flyover in a way that Grand Marais was going to be the last of the 5-year cycle and not, the 3rd year of the 5-year cycle. So at that time I told Ron, I said, I'll leave here and not do a full review on this property and come back during the normal quintile, and we can just treat it as you get updated as when, at the same time that all the other resorts on the block are going to get updated.
What? Okay, I don't remember all that conversation. Was that the time when I came in your office and when I first brought
Yep.
that issue?
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to one of the or I don't remember who it was. That's what I was in there to talk about, and you came over and you said, let's go have a look at the
inspection.
property. And I said, that's not what I'm here for, and you insisted.
Yep.
So I went with you. Yeah, I do remember that, but I thought that was last year.
No, it was June
Okay,
24,
you're-
yeah.
Yeah, you would know more.
So that is our standard procedure when a taxpayer comes to appeal. We do ask to see the inside of the units, especially when they're saying, I don't have a fireplace. And, you know, I drove down there, and as soon as the door opened up, I said, Ron, that's what we had $500 for.
But see, that's semantics. You call it a fireplace and I don't.
A wood.
That's the issue, Bob.
Yeah.
You can call it whatever you
I-
want to, but
Well, how many- I'm
this is
sorry.
what they're gonna decide.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
But
Thank
that goes
you.
back
I
to
was-
the question, what defines a fireplace? So let's just say that sometimes, I don't have an analogy, surprise, surprise, that comes off my head, but if somebody says, you know, I've got this, and you say, actually, you don't, because under the criteria that defines something, it has to, and yours doesn't. So that's what I'm saying. If anything is a heat device that exists other than, you know, whatever the heating element is, and it just automatically goes in it doesn't fine-tune that evaluation, then it's pretty much cut and dry. But you'd think that there would be something that would say, because let's just say that if I'm going to remodel or I'm going to build, I want to know what my tax exposure is, so I might not put in a swimming pool, I might put a hot tub in, or I might not put fireplaces in for multiple reasons, but I need to know your criteria so I can make an informed decision on what I'm going to do based upon the impact on me financially. So that's why is there no criteria? It's just the fact that it's another heating device, so therefore it all falls, pot belly, you know, anything, box stove, it all falls under fireplace?
So, no, this is very different. This has a vent to the outside of the house. You can go buy like an electric, it has like a little decorative fire
Yeah.
that's not real flame.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be counted as a fireplace
Okay.
because it is not a place where fire happens.
Okay.
So you're having a fire in a structure, it's in a fireplace.
Okay.
Commissioner Sullivan, please.
And I was just going to say, I have looked at the advertisements, and they are advertised as having fireplaces.
Are advertised as what?
It shows here that there are fireplaces in the ad.
What ad?
This is North Shore Visitor, Lund Motels and Cottages.
Yeah, that's not mine. Is this one right here? Or which one?
Yeah, I think
It
that's
looks like the same.
That
They
is-
look like the
Yeah.
same.
Well, what value difference are we talking about here?
It's minimal.
So the
It's
fireplaces,
heavy.
if brand new, would be valued, the wood stoves, the propane wood stoves, direct vent wood stoves, would be $500, but because of the depreciation that's applied, they actually come to $425, and our system rounds down, so they're $400 a piece. So it's $2,000 on the overall assessment. And I'll tell you this much, if you're gonna remove them from Ron's record, we need to recess and reconvene this meeting so that I can find every property in the county that has this on the record, and we gotta take them all off, and we gotta send out letters to everyone. So I would imagine there's probably a couple thousand people that we would have to do the same thing for.
And so what you're telling us, Bob, is that this is equal application
It
of
is.
how we evaluate. Yeah.
It is, yes. And I was actually, I don't know if you guys know Stacy Hammer, she did my hair today. She has a little electric fake fireplace in her office, and I took a picture of it because that is exactly what I would not put on the assessment record. This just plugs into the wall, and it has like a image, it's like lights that light up a fanned, you know, like a paper or whatever, just like a little streamer that flies up in the fan, and it's lit up and it looks like a fire, and I think it blows out little electric heat, but that is not built in with venting. She actually said her husband is a chimney cleaner.
Yeah.
She said, I can send James over there to find out if they're fireplaces, and do they require the cleaning of the direct vent stove, like the, the piping, the vent out?
They're not supposed to, no.
So,
When I put my first one in that number 2 that you saw, it went up like this, and it was poor venting, and it got all up the side of the cabin. And people would say, did you have a fire in that place? So I had to take that out. In fact, I hung a picture over the hole, and it's still there. And I put a one straight up to the top and went through the attic and up to the top, and that vented correctly. But they're a direct vent, because the air comes down the chimney, goes into the stove, it burns and goes up the small pipe inside that chimney. So it's a direct vent, gas, propane room heater.
built in
That's
to
what it says right on it.
yeah, I mean, it's built in. You put a hole through the wall, you run a gas line to it.
Well,
It's not just sitting on the floor.
Any
with plug-in.
heat, like the one I said before, the one I replaced, went through a chimney. There's a chimney in that cabin when it was built, and that's what was in there. My dad built the cabin in 1938. It had a propane heater sitting there, and I replaced that, and it was a direct vent, so I didn't need to put it in that chimney. I put it in the wall, it didn't vent well, so I ran the chimney up through the ceiling. There's,
Yeah. And can I ask, is there any difference in valuation between a wood-fired fireplace, wood stove, versus a propane-fired fireplace?
Yeah, I mean, like I
stove?
said, for the
Yeah.
wood stove, we have 3 levels of value.
Yeah,
It might
yeah.
even be 4 levels. I would have to go in. They're actually kicking us out of our assessment software right now because they're doing an update. I emailed them and asked
Perfect.
them not to do that.
Yeah.
But I just got a
They
notice that
probably
said.
did it especially because you emailed.
Yeah, well, I got a notice that said we're closing the system down at 7 PM, and I emailed them and said, please don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they logged us off now. But,
But there is a differentiation.
there is a
between the-
differentiation. We have different levels of value, so if
Yeah.
it is an actual wood-burning wood stove, it could bring a higher number. If it's a very small, I mean, there's wood stoves that you can disassemble and put in your ice shanty, and that, if that was in someone's house, that would probably have a $500 value, but,
It was fascinating. I just never knew there
Would
was a
that-
difference between the different
would that be
heating
the
types.
heater for the house then too? Or
So-
would that be just some kind of a,
So I think, and it seemed like, from what John Vegan and what you had put in the writing was, since it's the only heat source for these cabins, it shouldn't be valued.
Yeah.
But we have a quality grading for each building. So, if you had in-floor heating, like a hot water radiant heat, that's gonna be a lot more expensive, and it's gonna bump the quality of the construction, the grading we put on that property. If you don't have any heat at all, it's gonna lower the grade. But this is not like a wall-mounted, just a heater that the only thing it does is blows out hot air. It has a couple of knobs to turn hot air on. There is a viewing window. It takes up space on the
Sure.
floor in a 300 square foot cabin. I mean, to make a decision to use that floor space instead of just doing a wall-mounted heater to save space or a radiant baseboard, to me, there was a decision that this adds something to the cabin.
Well,
And the
I don't-
advertisements and the reviews say
I
the
don't know
same
if there was a decision. It was a convenience
It was an
thing, but the
opportunity,
fact
yeah.
that it does add value, I can see that, so.
But it is, and again, going back to it is all about being consistent in how we
Yep.
apply the assessment.
Yep, no, I hear you. Yep.
So, when we start talking about the effective age and saying that it should be 1970 versus 1980,
Well, there's
we
depreciation.
have notes in here, and I think, you had even put in your notes that like there was plumbing replaced in the 80s, in May of 1980. In fact, the notes from our
yeah,
own
they put
assessor.
the city ran sewer and water by us.
Those, like porches or decks, they weren't on our records back in the 80s. The motel portion was built in the 80s, right?
Right.
And if you're standing there looking at the motel and the cabins, do they look much different in the amount of deferred maintenance from the outside?
Well, they do now, yeah, absolutely.
I know some of the cabins could
The only
use a coat
reason,
of
the
paint.
only reason that 4 of them are painted was last spring was really good, and I painted every cabin on the sunny side. If you go around to the backside, and some are still sanded and not painted. But we haven't had cleaning help since COVID. So Rena and I are doing all the cleaning, renting, maintenance, everything. And then you come along with this little thing, and it's kind of
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
So just to finish
Yeah,
up what I was
yeah.
going with the effective age comments, but, so in the assessment, the effective age is established as a year, but really what it is the number of years. So it's 46, we have your effective age is 46 years. That means that if they were brand new and depreciated, as the improvements continue to happen, so when were the roofs done?
the roofs, at least, the newest roof that I have would probably be number 7, and that is at least, it's at least 20. And the others are like, there's two cabins that the insurance company has said they won't cover any damage due to roofs because they need new roofs. All of them need new roofs. Number 1 is really old. Number 3 is medium old. Number 7 is probably 20 years old. All of them are 20 to 30 years old on the roof, which is, by insurance standards, it's, you should put new
Gotta
roofs
take
on.
that, yeah.
Same
So-
with, there's no insulation in them. We don't stay open in the winter. Like I said before, old wiring. And they're really 90-year-old cabins. They're not 40.
Right, well, I know that the actual age is 90.
Yeah.
There's
So the
updates, though, is
effective
how you have
age,
to
I mean, I think
calculate
we all know that a roof isn't gonna typically last 46 years. We have an effective age of 46 years. I mean, the 46 years is accounting for everything in the whole structure.
Sure.
The fireplaces are not 46 years old, the roofs are not 46 year old, the paint's not 46 years old, the decks are not 46 years old.
No.
So there's a lot of things there that have happened in the last 46 years.
Yeah, and I did everything. I hired very minimal. Once in a while, I would have a helper helping me roof something.
it. Sure.
Number 7, I roofed myself. I did everything at that place.
Yeah.
And now I'm 81 years old. It's getting a little tiresome,
Yeah.
but I love the place. I grew up there, you know, and it's kind of historic.
Absolutely.
I mean, a book on the historic places in the North Shore, and I kind of like that.
It's iconic.
And, you know, it's my folks' place.
Yeah, yeah,
But
History
anyway,
matters.
so that's my case, so
Yeah.
I'll let you guys
yeah.
do what you do.
So just to finish
Thank
up
you.
what I was saying about effective age, so I set the depreciation scale.
Yeah.
You know, if I change these to 1970 effective age, the percentage of depreciation is something that I also set in another part of the CAMA system, but doing that, changing what a 1970 depreciation percentage is, would affect everything that has a 1970 effective age in the
Sure.
county. So, you know, I know John Vegan had kind of pointed to and said, you know, I think if you just change the effective age from 80 to 70, it would probably be more reflective. But John doesn't understand where the depreciation breakdown is. And that's something I said as well. So what I responded to John on that comment was that the quality is where we factor in the age of construction. You know, back in the 30s, the construction was different. So a home built in the 30s is never going to have the highest quality grading we have. I mean, I suppose it could if it was brick and
Stone.
a lot of updates
Yeah,
and stuff,
yeah,
but
yeah.
those are all things that are adjusted or changed by the assessor. And so, you know, at 1970, I may have 49% depreciation, and at 1980, 43% depreciation. It is not going to exactly do what he thinks it's going to do by just changing that effective age. So, you know, when I look at this, a lot of what I've heard from Mr. Lund was the percentage of the increase and how much the cabins went up. But if you look at the cabins going back to the 26 assessment, we have cabins that are renting for $120 to $190 a night that are valued at $9,000, $7,000, $13,000. I mean, that's just way too low. And I think if you look at some of the information I provided on some of the other resorts and how much their property values had increased, I mean, we're looking at 140, 120, 150% on those resorts from 2019, going back that far. So it's consistently happening. And, I didn't have this conversation, but someone in my office had a conversation with one of the other resort owners across the street from Ron. And, he said, well, I saw the new number on my assessment, but I can't disagree with it because I've had several people reach out and say they want to buy it for a lot more than that. And that property value from 2019 went up 150%.
That's crazy.
But there's demand. I mean, the demand is there for downtown Grand Marais commercially zoned. I mean, that property could be used for many different things with the zoning, and some people might see value.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I don't disagree with that. But what you're assessing is my cabins and what I have now, and like I said, nobody could pay $1 million for that place and do what I have done there and operate those cabins to pay for that.
Yeah.
That's just not realistic.
No, it's
So
broken.
that's what you're assessing. You can assess it, but it's John Vegan years ago told me that's what you call a blue sky sale. Sure, maybe. But anyway.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So just clarification that if you have electric baseboard heaters and you take them out and put in a direct vent gas stove,
Fireplace,
yeah, I mean,
Or stove.
yeah, I wouldn't, or not a wood stove,
Yeah.
but you see so
Propane
that,
stove, yeah.
even though that is still the primary heat source, I mean,
That's value.
it's,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
that's,
because the baseboard
$500
didn't work.
the presence of the wood stove is where we are adding the value.
Interestingly, though, you might be paying less for electricity than you would be for the propane.
Sure.
So,
Oh, yeah.
but they're just looking at the item, not that.
And it's the
Right.
aesthetic.
So-
It's the
Yeah,
aesthetic.
Yeah. Oh, Commissioner Gamble, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right. So, there can be a lot of nuance that you can discuss. One I would say is, when we look at a property and we evaluate it based upon the criteria that we have to use.
Sure.
Whether you
Understand.
paid, when we talked about construction prices, whether you paid somebody, you did it yourself, you made an improvement that brought it to this. I mean, our charge, stewardship responsibility, is to make sure that our assessor is applying equally the standards for evaluation.
Absolutely, I understand that.
And we can say, well, you're my next door neighbor, and we've got a great relationship, can't we cut a little slack kind of thing? But as soon as we do that, now we got a real problem.
I'm not
So
asking
I think our responsibility is, out of respect to every individual, is to say, we need to look at the criteria, making sure that our assessors is applying it correctly, and then understanding, developers will come in and say, depending upon the marketplace, do I want to add this or do I not want to add this? Because I might end up incurring a cost that I don't see I can get my return on that investment because of how I'm going to be assessed. So through the discussion, is just wanting to understand that everything has been fair and equally applied. Because you're a long-standing citizen and your parents operated that, when change take place, we scratch our head.
Yes, I mean, but it's just a different category of business, like John Vegan said. My place is more like a lifestyle than a real business, and that was his quote to me. And that makes sense, because that's, like I say, a lifestyle like that, you're not going to find anybody that can pay off $1 million on that place if they're running it like I did.
Yeah,
You know, but
I
anyway.
would just say that
Yeah.
I
I
mean, some of the
understand everything
subjective
has
things,
to
it
be-
makes it very
Yeah,
difficult. That's
yeah.
why I'm saying in your experience, because
Yeah.
it's long-standing, that the change that is like, whoa,
Yeah.
we've been here forever, and
No,
this
I
is.
know, and Minnesota used to offer, actually, I could do e-bikes at my place, because I'm right in front of the Kitchigami Trail.
Sure.
Oh.
Ends at 8th Avenue. And I could do e-bikes and provide a service there and get my taxes cut in about half, because Minnesota has a mom and pop law,
Yeah.
resort law, that if you do that, it used to not require the the others, we think we years ago used to get a break just because we
Yeah.
were mom and pop. But that's true. I don't know how many e-bikes I'd have to buy, but I'm not really interested in renting e-bikes anymore.
I understand, but
Yeah.
as things change over time, that's
Yeah.
why I referenced the long-standing, because as things change, I mean, we as commissioners, and I just came from a meeting today, and there's multiple changes that are taking place. Now,
Yeah,
we
I
have to
understand.
interpret that in the context of our budget. We look for resourceful, creative ways to try to mitigate increases in overhead and costs, and hope that we can remain competitive and
Yeah.
still make a livelihood, so.
Yeah.
It's bananas. Yeah, it's all broken, but
Okay.
appreciate your time here
Well,
and
I
your
appreciate
case and your
yours.
service. I mean, your family's been there forever, as you
Yeah,
said,
no,
and it's
and
iconic.
It is what it is, whatever you decide.
Yeah. I would say, Ron, that probably about 30 years ago or so, and I stopped into your place, and you had this really neat map that was illustrated of the community. And we weren't living here at the time. That's why I say it could be 30, 40 years ago. But
Yeah.
you had that when we stopped in, and that always impressed me because it was done so artfully and very reflective of all of the things that Cook County provides to people who choose to visit us. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thanks for your time, anyway.
Thank
So,
you.
all right, thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you, Ron.
Well, I lied because, I mean, there's no one else showing up, and we do have multiples beyond the two here. So now there is no one else, and we have also Judy Hamilton and Dayton and Lori Hansen, and then also RJ Murphy or EJ Cook, something like that. So is there anything with those that we should discuss?
So the Judy Hamilton property is the only one that is still in disagreement with us. So she did want me to submit those comments and emails, and there's a letter from Virginia Palmer. Did you guys get to read all of that stuff? So the property is about 75 acres roughly on Loon Lake. It doesn't necessarily stretch east to west along the lake shore on the south side. It kind of is a north-south parcel. It's got a lot of north-south distance. And it is an interesting property with the terrain. I mean, Loon Lake is that way. There's a lot of really, on the south side of Loon, it's really steep everywhere. There is an old road, I would estimate, they stopped maintaining that road maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, because there's, trees that are 3, maybe 4 inches in some spots that have grown through the roadbed. But I did walk up there. I walked all the way to the end. It's about a half mile in, and I mean, it was serious bushwhacking. I had wood ticks for 3 days on me, and I fell down and
3 days is, 1 day is the max.
well,
we should
I
get.
found one wood tick on me, and then I went and completely stripped down and searched and made sure there was no more. But for the last 2 days, we found wood ticks in the house. But we do have a dog.
Well, okay, well, never mind then.
Yeah. And I fell and
There's your problem.
hit my knee on a rock, but I was able to make it out of there. And almost got lost on the way out because of the overgrowth. But there is a raised road bed. It has ditch on both sides, and it has these big boulders. There's a part of the road where there's a steep drop off on the one side, and they put boulders, to kind of prevent a car maybe on the slippery road or something going over the edge. But there was a lot of work and excavation done to put that road in, and it would be, I think, a lot easier to open that road back up if somebody, wanted to go in and develop or put a house site back in there. And it's zoned in the FAR3 zoning. So, given the zoning, the old road that's in there, there is a section of the property where they cleared out and they stacked up a whole bunch of cinder blocks. And there's an old concrete septic tank sitting there, so, at some point, they were thinking about developing. But it looks like it's sat dormant for at least 15 years. And we were looking at a recent sale on Loon where they sold 115 acres, I think it was, and 3,000 feet of shoreline. That one was an estate sale. And, I did call the seller and the buyer on that one because it became a point of contention in our tax court case that we had on Leo and Hungry Jack Lakes. And, the seller said, yep, it was an estate sale. It was kind of something that, a windfall, if you will, for an inheritance. And the property just isn't the same. It's similar in that it is very steep along the shoreline, but it has wetlands between the shore and the roadway, and there is no road cut into that property. So, with the motivation of the seller, that seller actually listed at 1.4 or 1.3 million, and they did $400,000 in price reductions and ended up taking $900,000 on it. And that was listed in November and closed in like February. I talked to Land Services about that property back when it was a tax court issue, and they said, well, we had so many people calling, and we just, there was nothing you could do in the dead of winter to see what kind of potential it had. So, when I talked to the buyer, he actually provided me with an appraisal that was done, and it was 15% above what he paid for the property. And, I said, I think you got a really good deal on that for $900,000. So he agreed. He said, yeah, I think that there was a atypically motivated seller there, and, the appraisal speaks for itself. It was worth more than what they paid for it. So I did respond to Judy, and, you've probably read the email that she said, well, I'm not, obviously she's in Montana, I think, but she wasn't going to make the meeting. She asked me to present the information that she had provided and the Virginia Palmer broker's opinion of price, which, Virginia didn't address that road. And I do think that road adds a significant,
It's a lot of work done. Clearly.
it's a component that any developer would.
Especially if there's septic at the end. I mean, there was heavy machinery going down.
There was no septic at the end.
I mean, the tank.
Yeah, no, the tank was
at the beginning.
maybe,
Oh, okay.
a
Okay.
couple hundred yards in, but.
Hmm.
And
Couple
the
hundred yards.
first maybe 300 yards of the driveway, you could still drive a car in and turn around.
Yeah.
But after that, where the septic site was, or
Sure.
where the stuff was stacked up, it was pretty overgrown,
That
and,
was where the ticks started.
yeah.
I think another way of looking at that is when we looked at the Sheaf property and we walked that, and we talked about what it would take to construct a road to get in there. And so to discount the value of that, it would be contradictory to much of the discussion relative to the Sheaf property.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
One of the things I found really interesting about the property is also that there is access to Loon Lake on two sides of the property. So it's just not lake shore. I can pass this if people have not
peninsula,
seen this. But there's, an opportunity to get a view of the lake off to the east, and, you could have a canoe, kayak, whatever. But then there's also a little bay that is off to the south of that property. And that's an unbelievable feature
That's magic.
that really
Yeah, and
many
I-
properties do not have.
I kind of looked at it and thought that, that might be an area where if you did create parcels on the south side of the Gunflint Trail that are non-lake shore, you could maybe do like an HOA common element dock where, you have a couple of docks available down there to the non-lake shore parcels, which would bring the sale prices of those up. I didn't, go through a whole exercise of, this is what every parcel would sell for, and this
Right.
is what they would look like. But with the 5 acre minimums, I figured you could probably, and I did look for building sites based on the the topographies. And, I think on the lakeshore part of it, I found 6 good building sites, which would actually have larger than 5 acre parcels. But, I looked at it and I thought, I think this property is more valuable than the estate sale one because of the road going into it. And there was a lot that just sold on the south side of the Gunflint Trail. I mean, it's literally 100 yards from the edge of her property that's pending at $109,000 for a vacant lot. And that's no lakeshore, so.
Yeah.
The land up there is still in high demand. The people want to be up the Gunflint. And so, I don't know if there's any other questions on that one. The Matt and Kim Kramer parcel, that one is a property that had recently sold. The assessed value was way over what they paid for it. It's one of those houses that, until you get inside, you don't know everything that's going on. And, it was just part of our normal quintile inspection. It ended up being assessed at $250,000. They paid $179,000 after it was on the market for a long time. Rachel went out to look at it and made some quality or condition adjustments for, there was siding missing when they bought it, and it needed extensive amount of work. So we lowered the value on that one based on the sale price and the condition, and we put it into our rotation of permits, because we expect usually when people buy something like that, they're going to immediately start improving it. So at the end of the year, we'll go and see, if, is it now a $260,000 cabin? But that's typically what we do when we see these sales of properties that need extensive amounts of work like that. And
There was a few corrections that I had to make to that one.
yeah, corrections to the assessment record.
Yeah.
Yep. So that one we are making a recommendation to reduce as an assessor recommendation, and the property owners spoke with Rachel. They agree with that. That's why they're not here appealing that. And last but not least, the Dayton property, that appeal came in at like 3:30 yesterday. It's all the way up on Onagon Lake, and they had just built a new garage up there. Jay was able to make it up there today and inspect the house and the garage.
Wow. Had
a conversation with the property owner and told her that, this year we're inspecting the west end, next year we're up the Gunflint Trail. He was looking at it and he said the house is probably undergraded, the garage may be overgraded, but if we balance those out, it's probably gonna be about the same number at the end of the day. And so she agreed that for this year, we would just leave it at the 908.5. But we did put it on this just because it may have been different, and we typed this up in the morning, so.
Yeah.
So really, we have one assessor recommendation, and everything else would be a board action if there's any other changes.
Do you have any other, yeah.
No.
I'm pretty impressed with the analysis that you've done and your staff, and I don't have any changes. Does anyone else?
No, I would just say that I would agree. The work that's done, the empathy and the fairness and the commitment to understand,
The
all those things
details.
are good quality. We are entrusted with, applying the rule of law fairly, and as we've said here, there's a lot of things that happen to us we don't like, but the only thing we can do is go down and get the legislator to change, and we have to do it then. So I would, however you want to handle it, I think we just move forward and affirm your recommendations to us. Would be my position.
Yeah.
What formality do we need for a motion there?
It would be a motion to approve the assessor recommendation, and then everything else without action would just stay the same.
Yeah. So I'll make a motion to approve the assessor recommendations for our appeals and equalization meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
I support that.
Thank you, Commissioner Gamble. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion?
No, just I think it's important. It isn't going to be reflected in the motion, but I appreciate the discussion, and back to the comments that were made, that I just appreciate all the work that you put into it.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Yeah. Outstanding work, and every year I learn something, every year. And so I just really appreciate the work that you
If there's anything you guys want next year, like as far as the PowerPoint or information that you'd like to see, I'd be happy to.
I think the
include
PowerPoint is great. I just think the popcorn's missing.
One little
That's
question.
only if there's a room full. That's
If
right.
you didn't see the propane burning in your direct vent thing, then is it still a fireplace?
No, it's a lower value then. It's that visual that, there's.
Yeah, the visual, I don't know what what you're talking about. I've never
It looks-
seen.
It
looks-
exists, it's just blah. It's basically like a direct vent wall heater.
Yeah, it's
basically.
what it
Yeah,
is.
I've seen wood stoves, I guess, that don't have a viewing window.
Yeah.
It's a
It's a whole
stainless
scale of,
one. Wow.
what's the highest? Is
I'm
that,
gonna
you
get
said the
some
Oh,
stone
fireplace wise, I
Yeah.
think the highest is probably 40 or 50,000. You get a stone fireplace that goes
Oh.
floor to ceiling and two sides, or,
Oh,
you
yeah,
get
yeah.
a,
Think about like
Oh,
Nana
sure.
Bajou, some.
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
right, that's even just
I
big,
think you're gonna
yeah, but yeah,
exceed that,
double
but-
sided, or they have corner ones, or,
Yeah.
And that's the, replacement cost. It could be
Sure.
depreciated from that number.
Sure.
but-
It
Yeah,
might
yeah.
be helpful, Bob, if next year's, if you wanted to give some examples that tie to what you're saying verbally. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Fireplace, here's an example of da-da-da. And you can look at something that seems very organic and very simple, whatever, but that's what it is, all the way to, and here's what we're talking about, like if it's Nana Bijou, whatever, made of stone and hand laid up and huge. But I think people that are in the business of trying to make profit and know what their margins are, they look at these things and make a determination based upon how they know they're going to, that evaluation is going to be effective. When you have somebody with the longevity that Ron has had, these things have changed over time for him, so it is sort of disillusioning. But.
And he's at the mercy of market,
Right.
Yeah.
of the market, and there are people that are willing to spend a whole lot of money, more than the structures might actually be worth, but.
One question I get, you're looking at, a wood stove, this, that. The actual quality of the construction, how is that, can it be determined? Somebody
Of
can
the
put in.
stove, or
Well, anything.
the walls, certainly, yeah.
You can kind of slap something together,
Yeah.
and it's the same wood, it was used, same materials, and one's gonna fall apart because they didn't cut it very tightly, they didn't nail it very well, or screw it, or things like, that can be enormously different.
Don Eliason
As
said
to-
that John Henry would nail 2 nails in and pull one out, just to save on nails.
I've always been curious if, you can't, how much time would you have to spend to even understand that? Whether all holes to the outside were, that you can't see
Yeah.
necessarily, whether, how
is
well it was done.
Is that
Something is
nuance
going to
something
last, the same exact materials,
Yeah.
let's say theoretically, one's going to last 50 years, the other one's going to last 150 years.
Yeah.
With the quality of the workmanship.
And
How can you
maintenance.
tell that?
Well, craftsmanship is something that we look for, and usually it becomes evident,
see
on
it.
an older structure
Yeah.
if there's poor craftsmanship, because, you can see it when you walk up that things are falling off or
Yeah.
loose, or, you can tell there's a draft coming through somewhere. New construction, the construction quality, it factors in the materials, everything from what kind of foundation is it, what type of heating system is it?
Sure.
And then, like, you might have a house that has cedar siding, and then you have a house where they did it like in the Lindy style, and the siding is angled in each different section above, like they'll have in the gables, they'll have angled cedar. So that's a craftsmanship thing where they're spending more time and making more cuts, and that's where it ups that level of quality in just the craftsmanship.
Do you rate craftsmanship in different,
It's
for the
part
whole
of-
building?
yeah.
It is part of.
It is part of what we're factoring in.
Okay.
So in fact, we had an appeal on Tate Lake earlier in the appeal season. And, I described to her, I said, when they did that angled cedar in all of your gables, that was more work than just running a sheet of something up there, which, that would be common in a lot of new
But you could do that in a poor way. You could do the
I angle
angle
stuff
in a
poorly
poor
all
way
the
that starts
time.
falling apart,
Yeah.
in a number of years.
Well,
Doesn't that-
we see it, that there are certain builders that, they'll build a house, and then the next thing you know, the windows are leaking on one side
Right.
of the house, or, in
Exactly.
a driving rain, all the
I've
windows
always
leak.
wondered if that's, how well that's factored in.
That
because-
will
yeah.
always be called out to us when,
Okay.
when a property owner, so there's a new construction, I'm not gonna pinpoint it, but a new construction in the west end that has had some issues, and trust me, they've let us know. That, yeah, it may be a brand-new house, but every time the wind blows, we feel like it's gonna tip over. The windows leak and those things, so.
Is that fall in that category, like curb appeal?
Well, yeah, you can't tell, a lot, like with this particular house I'm talking about, you can't tell by looking at it unless, you get in and really are looking around the windows, you could maybe see some evidence of moisture coming in. So that's where like a home inspection comes in. But from the assessment perspective, we're gonna have to see evidence of it. You know, we're gonna have to be called out and they have to point it out to us.
When do you think the assessors are gonna use blower doors?
Yeah.
And-
Wow.
And use, how many, let's say, are all houses evaluated for craftsmanship to the same degree? If you can walk
think
into
so.
the house or not, or, you know.
I think
that
so.
kind
I
of
mean, if you're looking at our assessment records, and you're talking about a house that has heat and plumbing, they're typically gonna be between like a 6.5, six grading, up to maybe like an 8.5. And if you get over 8.5, it's a really high quality, I mean, it's getting up there in high quality construction. So it's a pretty tight range, but the value between a 6 and an 8.5 is significantly different. So, you know, if we're, like I say, if we're going out and looking at a new construction, that's where we're setting a grading. We're gonna look for that craftsmanship, and, you know, we kinda are familiar with the builders. Specific builders build a much more quality product than other builders, and we kinda know that stuff. From the average buyer's perspective, especially if you're coming from outside of Cook County and you're looking at something to buy, you may not know those things, and that's where people really should be cautious and get home inspection to see if there are those issues. You know, the home inspector will plug in each outlet to make sure that the wiring was done correctly and to make sure that you have GFI trips on the water, you know, in the kitchens and bathrooms, and those are things that most people don't know to look for, but when you're, you know, an assessor, a real estate professional, or a home inspector, you're gonna find and see those things. We don't go in and plug into the outlets, but.
Well, and Bob knows if it's a Dave Mills paint job, way down.
So Ron Lund's place, fairly good craftsmanship?
Well, yeah, I mean, the house, everything was built in the 30s. I don't know, I would have to look at what the house was built, but yeah, I mean, it's lasted the test of time.
Yeah, it
The
seems-
average house, you know, I think we say lasts about 100 years. If you were to build that house and not touch it for 100 years, by year 100, it would have no value. That's kind of theoretically how it works.
And I've been in both the motel and in one of the cabins, and I would say it's really good work.
Yeah, and in a couple of the advertisements I've found, you know, they say, oh, these cottages have been updated, and those advertisements are from when the pool was still across the street.
Oh,
Right.
So, around that time frame, they were updated, according to the advertisement.
Okay, well, this has been excellent discussion.
so we have
We
a,
have a motion and support. It's probably enough
Yeah.
discussion.
No
Uh,
discussion.
All those in favor?
aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The last item is for Brady to move on.
What's he going to do?
He's not often a voting member.
He's
Brady
voting
is a
on it.
voting member.
He's not
Yes.
often a voting member.
Oh, yeah, so he
this-
has to make the motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Did we do
Yes, sir.
anything on Round 1?
Yes,
We had
no,
all the, yeah.
No.
Everything else is no. Okay.
everything, there was no motion.
Okay.
What do we need to sign?
You have to sign your affidavit that you were here, that you were present.
Does that have to happen before
Just
adjournment?
throw that in.
No.
Okay. Well, so we're just
But
waiting on Brady to
we're just
make a
waiting for
motion.
Brady.
yeah,
Oh,
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Excellent. We have a motion. Is there support?
I'll support that.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Any further discussion?
No. Did you see
other
he
than to
was
say thank
blushing?
you for waiting patiently for me. That was kind of.
Of course. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, all good.
Thank you, Bob.
All right.
You guys-
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, one year I had to go chase Bobby Deschamps down because he forgot to sign it before he left.
Oh,
Yeah.
And he
He's not
drives
a slow
fast.
driver.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, I think I